Alright, hey guys, welcome back to a brand new video. Today I'm going to be teaching you guys how you can do certain things on After Effects, and kind of how I use it, and, how you can do, like, shakes, and like, kind of do, like, the slow to fast, like, slow-mo kind of thing, but smooth and stuff like that. Firstly, obviously, whenever you open up After Effects, you just want to start a new project and a new composition, so I'm just going to start a new project. Whatever footage you use, it doesn't really matter, like, it's up to you. I'm just going to be using some footage off of a Instagram account, which I will pop up on the screen. You guys should definitely go follow them. He posts really good, like, flipping and free running stuff. So when you open up the composition, you can just name it whatever you want. You gotta put in the resolution, the frame rate, which can go up to 120 resolution. So if you put this in, you can edit this, you can change this while you're rendering. This is basically, After Effects is a very intensive task on a computer. So if you've only got like 4 gigabytes of RAM, After Effects is going to be very, very difficult to use. Also, I just want to say, excuse my voice. I'm still a bit sick. So if I keep doing that, that's why I've got like phlegm in my throat. But you can see, so if it renders at a quarter, it's obviously going to render at a quarter of the quality of the video, which you can change during it. It doesn't affect the final render though. So if you have less RAM and like a less powerful system, you want to render it at a lower thing while you're playing it back, which I'll explain soon. But for now, I'm just going to put mine on full, and the duration, I'm just going to keep it on 28 for now, and we can edit that later. And so now, when we're in the composition, we just want to drop in our footage. Alright, so I've got my footage, and I'm going to just drag it down into this box here. This is the kind of the timeline. If you guys have used any other editing software, they pretty much always have a timeline. If you look at the timeline here, we can see the footage is longer than 28 seconds, so I'm actually going to quickly extend it. It goes for 2909, so I'm just going to extend that. If we just open the composition settings and change that to 2909, we can see the footage is now full, and you can drag this down here, and you can see this kind of brings it in closer. So first thing we're going to want to do, if the image is, if the video is too small, you can see this is a 360p video on a 1080p composition. So if I just go transform and go fit to comp, we can see it's going to do that. It's going to look trashy quality, but depending on where you're posting it and the effects you put on it, it should look better once you're done. So now what you want to do is, if you just play that back, you can see it'll play back. You can see this green line is going across. So what this green line does, it's basically the pre-render. So every time you put an effect on a clip, it's going to have to re-render that clip, which is why After Effects is very intensive. And you can see that it uses my RAM for this. So if you're playing it back at full quality at 360p, you can see that loaded pretty quick for me. But for someone with less RAM, it might be a bit more difficult to load. But if you were to put it to a quarter quality, you can see it'll reset, and then it renders a lot quicker than what it would before. And that's because you can see it's more pixelated. But when you actually export the full video, it's going to look identical to if you were on full quality. I'm going to go over some effects and show you guys what you can do with After Effects and kind of how to do it. So the first thing is a shake. So you can see if I wanted to put a shake on whenever he drops. Okay, so I've just put in some music, and another thing before I mention, before we actually do the effects and stuff, is that After Effects has things called plugins, and it's basically like what allows you to do certain effects. And it's what basically everyone who does After Effects edits normally uses. So the main one for shakes I find is S-Shake. So to download this, so I don't want to like link anything to this just in case like it has anything getting taken down, because that can have an effect on YouTube. If you just find out where to download Sapphire, if you just go on Google and Google how to download Sapphire on After Effects for free, you will most likely find it, and you just download it, install it into your After Effects, boot it up, and you'll be fine. So one of the things that gives you for Sapphire is the Sapphire Distort S-Shake. So S-Shake is what I use for shakes, and what a lot of people use it for. If I drag in my music, and I'm going to try and sync this up, so the best thing to do, pull this down and open up waveforms so that you can see where the music kind of starts and where you can sync it to. So I'm just going to play this back, and we're going to find out where I can sync it. Okay, so the first drop is on this pump right here. So if we grab this, what I normally do, if we grab this, delete this, go back to here, and we pop this right on the drop. So if we just go over a couple of keyframes using control, or Option or Command or whatever it is on Mac. If we just go over, you can see he kind of pops down right there. So if we drag this along to here, and we pull this out to here, you can see now it's basically synced with the same thing. So if I just pull back down the waveforms, we can see the drop is right about here. So now I'm going to go through how you guys can do a shake effect, and the way I do it, and also my settings, so you guys can kind of replicate it if you like. So what you want to do, you've got your clip here, your footage, in your composition over here. So if we drag on the S-shake effect, it's going to open up the effects control panel. And if we also drag across transform, which has to be below it here, so you can see the effects are here. Now if we click on this little arrow next to the MP4 and then hit effects, we can see it also opens the effects. So if we hit down on transform and hit this little stopwatch next to scale, it's going to give us keyframe options so that we can configure the keyframes and make it easy in and easy out and whatever you want to do with that. So if we go right on the drop and then we hold Control and Shift or whatever it is on Mac, I think it's Option, and then you hit the left arrow key twice, you're going to go across 20 frames. So we're going to go across 20 frames and we're going to put another keyframe. So if we hit this little diamond right here, it's going to add another keyframe. Same if we do it the other direction. If we hit that, it's going to add another keyframe. So now we've got our 20 keyframes divided on each side. So if we go over here, back to this keyframe, and we click on this value right here and hit 150, you can see it'll zoom in. So you can obviously edit this effect to whatever you want. Once you kind of know what you're doing, you can, you know, play around with it and make it your own. But this is the settings that I generally use for kind of the heavier shakes on heavier songs. So if we go over to S-shake here, the first thing I normally do, turn on motion blur, set the frequency to 7. That's what I normally use. Tilt shake, don't like the tilt shake, so I generally turn that completely off. For the Y shake, around 20. And the X shake and Z shake, I just leave that as is, which the Z shake is just automatically off. So now that we've got that there, you can see that's basically what we do. And then if we come down and close the transform, reopen this one here. Now what we want to do is we want to hit the stopwatch next to amplitude. So if we hit that, go across to the 20 frames, which will sync with that frame. And we hit down a frame like that, same way the other direction. And if we just put these two keyframes on the end to 0, and then the middle one is, this is where you can kind of configure it. I normally use around 10. So if we put that there and we play it back, it should look like this now. But obviously, that's not the best we can do. So if we want to make it so that it's more smooth, we can reopen the transform effect, and the first thing I normally start with the transform. So if you click this little button here, so make sure that you have these selected. Just one will do. But make sure you got it selected and it's highlighted blue, or this won't work. And you come over here to the graph editor, and you open this. You just want these same settings, edit speed graph, and if it doesn't show straight away, just hit show selected properties, and you can open that by right-clicking. So if we zoom this in here towards this blue line is where we're up to in the clip. So if we get this and drag this down, this can be a bit fiddly, but once you learn how to use it, it's a bit easier. So basically the way this works, if we were to pull this down to here, you can see it zoom out and then zoom in. But this is what we use to make it smoother. So if we drag this onto the line in the middle is where it will, is where like kind of the baseline is. So if we do the same on the other side, you can see sometimes it'll go like that. So we just want to try and get this like that. There we go. And if we drag that to there, you can see that now it's just a bit smoother than what it was before in sense of the zoom in, because it's kind of going in. Instead of just hitting a blunt edge and just going straight into it, it eases it in and eases it out. Which obviously as well, if you want a more smooth effect, you can right click on it and use the keyframe assistant to do ease in and ease out. Ease out obviously for the end frame and ease in for the start frame. So now you just want to do the same for the amplitude. So if we hit the amplitude one and come over here, we can do the same, except when we do the amplitude, one thing that we want to do different is you want to also drag up, this middle box, and drag this one down. So now the effect should look something. So you can see before we had the kind of really big shake effect, and it was just straight into it, and it kind of went everywhere. Obviously, if you want a heavier effect, you can see if we change the amplitude here to something like 20, it's going to be a heavier shake. But if we keep it on 10, it's a bit lighter. So depending on what you want, obviously you can play around with this. Motion blur, you don't have to use motion blur, but I generally always recommend motion blur because otherwise it just looks kind of, I don't know, just not right in my opinion. So if you have motion blur, to me it looks a lot better. It's up to you though, obviously. So once you got those keyframes, that's pretty much set up for that, and you can change the frequency as well. So if you were to change the frequency down, it just doesn't have as heavy of a kind of swerve, I guess. You can see it's just kind of more straight to the point, but I normally use around 7. So if we look at it playback, it looks like that, that's how I normally do my shakes. Obviously, you can play around with this once you kind of got the base idea and play it, make it however you want, because obviously everyone likes things different ways, and different songs have heavier shakes and stuff, which might appeal to someone more than another kind. So that's up to you. So the next thing that we're going to want to do, if we want to, a slow-mo effect. So I'm going to teach you guys how to do that. You don't obviously have to do that, but if you wanted to do that, you can. So I'm going to show you guys how you can do a slow-mo effect around when he does this handspring. So if we get another effect, which you can also just download off the internet, if you just find the right spot, just don't download anything dumb, and don't download off any dumb sites. Just get it off a video. It's trusted, from a trusted person with a good amount of comments and likes. I guess that's kind of how I go off it, and just with a good amount of support. So this plugin is called Twixtor. If you just Google Twixtor free for After Effects, you can find it. So if we drag and drop Twixtor Pro on, this can kind of play around with our whole effect of like timing. So this might screw up our shape, but we can fix it. So if you see a red box or something, you just want to drag this on top. So if we pull this up here, my default settings that I always use for Twixtor, motion weighted blend and contrast / edge enhance. Now this is also where you want to check your frame rate, because if you put your footage, if your footage is, for example, some people can use this for an effect, but if I were to put my footage at 22 FPS, right, which it's not, it's a 30 FPS clip, we get this whole effect of kind of a, it's kind of like a blur around the edge of the object that's moving, in a sense, and the whole kind of screen. So if we let that render, and we play it back, you can see it's kind of, he's kind of got this like blur around him. Go back to the clip, we can see also up in the top left here, it is 30 frames per second. So we're going to go over here, and we're going to put the input frame rate to 30 FPS. So if we pull out Twixtor here, we can see you can do speed or frame number. I generally go with the speed option. So if we wanted to slow down here when he goes on a handspring, so if we kind of pick our frame, so if we were to go from here, and we hit this keyframe, and let's close the S-Shake and Transform effect. If we pull down Twixtor and go to Output Control, we can see the speed here. So if we go across, if we go across about 10 frames, put an effect, and then we can go back. And we come to this speed one, and let's say I want to go with 40, right? So now when we play it back, it's going to, what that means is that, here, I'm actually going to quickly turn After Effects down a bit. What it means is that whenever it is playing back, it is going to go from 100 speed, you can see the speed here, so we're on 100 here, 94.76, 49, and that's also why the frame rate matters, because if it was on 60, it would change the speed values of how quick it goes. So you can see right on this keyframe where we put 40, it goes from 40, and then it starts to go back up to 100. So I want him to kind of stop on around there. So if we do that, and we play it back, so it's going to look really slow-mo, and the audio is going to go a bit like scuffed and kind of do that while it is rendering. But we can see now our shake is thrown off, and it's not actually hit whenever he lands, it's hit mid-air, which is why we also need to go back and edit our shake. But if we play back now, you can see it's slow-mos, and then it goes back out. So obviously, we're not done with because we can go to the graph editor. So if we pull this up, and this, and if we pull this down, we can see it's going to ease in and ease out a bit more. And as well, if we want even more of an ease effect, we can add the ease in and ease out effect onto it. So now if we play it back, you can see that it kind of goes in and it slows down nice, and then it goes back out. But at the same time, I kind of want to extend this. So if I put this out a bit more on both sides, you can see it's going to be a bit further. And if I put this down to like 20, we can see it's going to completely change it again. So you can see it eases in into the slow-mo, and we can also go back to the graph editor and change it however you like. so you can make it so that this is more sudden. But in this case, I think I might probably extend this out a bit like that. So you can see it's like that. Now another thing that you can also do with your shake, which I forgot to mention, is if you want it to kind of extend more in the sense that it has more of an effect after it, if you go to the amplitude and you drag this out a bit, so that once it's finished, instead of just going to the same keyframe time, it should look like this. We go back to the keyframe editor, and we drag this out a bit. And then we pull this kind of further back, so that there is more of a curve in this. You can see when it plays back. So before, it just straight ended, but now it has more of a long-lasting effect as it goes out, and the amplitude kind of slows down a bit further. What we could do is we could, if we wanted to, add a second shake onto that, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So this bit can get kind of fiddly with the whole keyframe things, and it can take a bit of time to get it to work, but if you just play around with it, I'm sure you'll eventually be able to get it to work just perfect. So we can see that the first pump is there, and then he also lands, so he pumps there, and then he lands right when he says boy. So if we go around here, and we bring this keyframe on the amplitude back, because we're going to have to do that if we want this to work. So if we pull this back a bit, let me go here and sync these two. Now if we go back to where it says boy, which is right here. Yep. Okay, so if we go here and we put an amplitude and a scale, and I'm going to try and get the frames to start off the same. So if we look over here, this is on the 189th frame where we're at. If we come back over to here, this is 181, which means they're obviously 8 frames apart. So if we go Control Shift and 1 right arrow, and then we go Control and do 2 left arrows, that's going to go 8, which is going to go 10 to the right, 2 back. So then if we put another one here, and another one here, and then we can see, so it goes down to a scale of 100 here, so that if we make it, so this comes back up to maybe 140, and then back down to 100, and same here if the amplitude kind of maybe comes up to 7, and then goes back down to 0, we can see that it's going to do the same thing, but it's going to be a bit stuttery. So if we come over here, obviously you've got this sudden effect. So if we kind of sync these up like that, and do that, and then we do the same for the transform, pull that down, kind of even them up, try to anyway, pull that one up, oh, hold on, reselect it, there we go. So if we kind of want more of a hard shake, which I feel like I want, I might go to 9, and maybe make the scale 145. There we go, that looks better. So, that's what it looks like. Play it back. And that looks pretty good to me. So, obviously, we can have more clips, which I'll probably try and do. But I'm going to, just for now, show you guys, if you were just doing the one clip, and I came to the end, and obviously, Twixtor kind of has that effect whenever it transitions. So, if you just turn it on so that Twixtor, if we divide the clip right there where the clip ends, so Control-Shift-D, we just delete that. And then that should just play back how we want it to. Obviously, this sequence, or composition, sorry, is 28 seconds, which we don't want. So we're going to say the clip ends on 4 seconds, 4.1 seconds. So if we go over here and change this, if I change it to 4.10, so now that's perfect. So if it's kind of freezing and buffering in certain spaces and rendering with RSMB Pro, what I normally do, if you go Control A and right click here and go Pre-Compose and hit OK, it's going to put all of these into a new thing. So if we now drag RSMB Pro onto this pre-comp and put 1 on it and then play it back, that should work a lot better. Now, as I also mentioned earlier, if you render it in quarter, it's going to be the same when you export it. So if we render this in quarter now, I'm going to show you, and then we export it, I'm going to show you guys the final result. If we go over to here and go export, now I use Adobe Media Encoder. I've never really used the render queue. So if you don't have a Media Encoder, you can look up how to do the render queue. It's pretty similar, but I've never really used it, so I'm not going to go over it like that. It's going to come up like this. It's mildly confusing. You just got to wait, give it a couple seconds. Your clip that you've just hit to export will pop up here. So if you just wait a moment, it should appear here. And as we can see, that's the output file. So if we hit on this bitrate, and we can go to custom, I'm going to show you guys the settings I normally use. So you've got 1920 by 1080. Obviously, you can use whatever res you want, and for whatever you want to use. Like, for example, if you want an Instagram box, you can use like 1000 by 1000. You can use all different kinds of things. Frame rate, that's of course up to you. Always render at maximum depth. That's what I recommend. So if you choose, I always recommend you should probably choose high and 5.1. Now here we've got VBR2 pass. Bitrate, I normally go 100. Depending on your effects, you can maybe go lower. I find the best quality for certain things is usually 100, and especially with these higher effects. I normally render at maximum render quality. That's kind of up to you. And obviously, depending on how long your video is also how long, the estimated file size. So all we have to do, once we've done that, you hit OK, and we can just hit this plus, and that's going to take 20 seconds apparently, so that shouldn't take too long. So now that it's done, if we go here, we can save that, but I'm not going to, I should be fine. If we open this, just gave it a random name, and we play it, let's see. That's pretty much it from me. If you guys enjoyed, be sure to drop a like, comment, subscribe. If this helped you, let me know. If there's anything else you want to see that I've perhaps done in my edits over on my Instagram, let me know. And that's basically it, guys. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Peace out, guys. Bye-bye.